This character's psychology has fascinated a lot of film critics in the past. Some would refer to him as a man who just wanted to protect his family. Others would say he's one of the most evil sociopaths they've ever seen. His character arc goes from a man who wanted nothing to do with crime like the rest of his family to becoming the head of the mafia, the Godfather, leading them in their criminal acts. And along this journey, Michael becomes this dark character, capable of lies, manipulation, and violence when he feels necessary. So how did this well-behaved young man turn so dark and evil? And could he have gone down another path if his choices were different? To understand his journey, we must start at the beginning. Starting with his father, Vito Corleone, the head of the family. Vito was born in Italy and came to America alone as a kid, where he met his wife Carmela, and they got married at the ages of 18 and 16. They had 2 sons, Sonny and Fredo, whilst Vito was working a low-paying job, causing him to get into crime as a young adult and build a name for himself, the Godfather. He then had our story's protagonist Michael. Then he had a daughter named Connie. He later down the line adopted a son, Tom. Because Vito had started this life of crime and built up this big reputation, his children were all raised within this lifestyle too, being influenced by it, seeing the rewards it brings, and his sons soon took up the roles within the crime business and became part of the mafia. All of them except Michael. Michael was different. He wasn't like his brothers, he was more intelligent, had more resistance to the temptation of crime. A theme I want to explore in this video is the notion of the butterfly effect. To give the butterfly effect the most simplistic definition, it means every decision, no matter how minor, somehow has an effect in your life path and has led you to where you are right now, watching this video. So at every key step in Michael's journey, we need to understand what his other choice could have been and what that means in terms of his psychology. Whilst his brothers seemed invested in the criminal world, Michael instead enrolled to university, mainly to avoid getting sucked into his family's business and utilize his intelligence that was superior to his siblings. This was his first important choice. He could have followed the same path his siblings did, or become an outlier and choose his own path, which is what he chooses, stepping away from temptation as he has no interest in crime. His father Vito actually never wanted Michael to be involved in the criminal business and hoped he'd go into politics, a senator or a governor. That was what Vito wanted for Michael. However, Michael, while still in university, decided to enlist as a Marine for World War II, another decision he voluntarily chose to do, where he served and was awarded the Navy Cross for his bravery. Remember his involvement in the war, this is going to be important for later. Upon return to university, he meets another student, Kay, and the two fall in love. Michael attends his sister's wedding with Kay in New York, and whilst there, assures Kay that he is nothing like the others in his family.
That's my family, Kay, it's not me.
He wants her to know that he wants a normal life and nothing to do with the mafia. Michael spends most of his time with Kay, being a good boyfriend to her and still staying away from the crime business. That is, until his father's enemies caught him slipping and attempted to assassinate him. This is where things start to get interesting. Despite Michael never wanting to involve himself with the crime side of the family, no love was ever lost for his father. In fact, he had extreme love for his father, and Vito was one of the few people Michael actually felt comfortable around. So after his father was almost assassinated, a switch in his heart was flicked. Michael was always aware of the risk that his father bears being in the crime business, but now in critical condition, reality hits Michael, and he becomes fearful of losing his father. In this instance of finding out what happened to his father, there's 2 choices he feels that he could make. That is to either grieve, make sure his dad's okay, and let his criminal family deal with the people responsible, or take matters into his own hands, join the family and use his intelligence to help. And despite avoiding them the whole time, Michael picks the latter option. And thankfully so, Michael saves his father from another assassination attempt at the hospital, putting his superior intelligence to good use. At this point in time, all Michael wants is for his father to survive. Whilst doing so, a corrupt police officer, Captain McCluskey, breaks Michael's jaw after punching him in the face in an attempt to scare him out of this crime life. The blend of his father's life almost ending, and the realization that even institutions like the police that are meant to protect us can be corrupt, makes Michael change his view on the world. This is when we get a new Michael Corleone, and we're presented with arguably the most important scene in the film.
If Clemenza can figure a way to have a weapon planted there for him, then I'll kill them both.
Michael says to Sonny that it's not personal, just business, but his desire is led by the fact he wants revenge on the man responsible for his father's assassination and thereby protect his family, and also revenge on the police officer that punched him. However, by telling himself it's for the family business, it helps him deal with the cognitive dissonance in his mind. Cognitive dissonance, again put in the most simplistic terms, is when two cognitions in your mind aren't compatible with each other. A cognition is a thought, an attitude, a personal value or behavior. The dissonance can happen when your actions don't match up with your values, or if you've learnt new information that disagrees with a long-standing belief or opinion of yours. There are a few signs that someone is experiencing cognitive dissonance that I've put on the screen, but the main one that seems to align with Michael is this justification or rationalization of behavior. Any negative resistance he had about committing crime, especially murder, he now balances out with the fact that it's for the benefit of the family. It's a business decision which justifies the action in his mind. And given who his family are and the people associated with his family, the mafia culture suggests that taking a life is almost expected as retribution. No one is surprised at his suggestion, they're just surprised that it's Michael that's suggesting it. Another aspect to see it from is the desensitization to death and killing that Michael may have. Desensitization essentially means that the stimulus no longer causes an emotional response out of you, most likely due to the overexposure of it. The beholder may lack the ability to grieve or mourn, and perhaps lack empathy for the people who've lost their lives. Michael's family have claimed the lives of people before, so being a murderer doesn't make him different from the rest of his family, and therefore killing in his mind isn't a big deal. And if you recall from earlier, Michael is a war veteran. He's seen soldiers dying around him and had to do his fair share of killing, and in the war it's just seen as doing your job. Just like in this case, taking away these two men would be a help for the family business. And so we bring back the butterfly effect, and Michael has two decisions: advise another member of the mafia to make the sacrifice, return to Kay and live a normal life once his father's health and safety is assured, or he could do the deed himself, flee the country and live with that decision. And I think you can guess which one he picked. After taking the lives of Salozzo and McCluskey, Michael flees to Sicily, an island in southern Italy, where he'll remain for a few years until it's safe for him to return. Whilst in Sicily, Michael seems to show no guilt or trauma, and by the way he acts, I'd assume he has no empathy for the men he's killed. This then begs the question: is Michael a psychopath? The predominant trait associated with psychopathy is the lack of empathy. Psychopaths don't care at all for the feelings of others, unless they need to manipulate them. I do think Michael is in the realm of antisocial personality disorder, which is the overarching diagnosable condition psychopaths fall into, but I don't think Michael is a psychopath. Predominantly, psychopaths are more genetic. There's an underdevelopment in parts of the brain responsible for emotional regulation, which increases the chances of someone lacking empathy and in many cases having a disregard for the law, both of which Michael has proven. But where I think Michael develops this uncaring nature from is his environment. He's seen his family do this stuff before, and like I said, he's desensitized from the war. Therefore, Michael would fit into the old notion of a sociopath. Being a sociopath is all about external factors, who and what you're surrounded by. The combination of his family and the war once again would have led to this. Whilst in Sicily, Michael has a love at first sight moment when he sees a Sicilian woman named Apollonia. He spends some time with her, and not long after they get married in Sicily. And it's not apparent in the movie, but in the novel she's also pregnant with his child. Michael finds true love in her, adores her for her innocent heart, and she fills him with constant happiness. This almost reverses things for Michael. He's here in Sicily off the back of a bad deed, but in turn has found real love, and perhaps normal life can be restored for him. However, disaster strikes back at home.
Brutte notizie dall'America. Tuo frate Santino l'hanno ammazzato.
Michael's eldest brother, Sonny, was set up by their younger sister's husband, Carlo, and he was brutally murdered by the Barzini crime family. The news reached Michael in Sicily and, amidst the shock, planned to relocate out of concern for his own safety. But it was too late, as Michael's trusted bodyguard, Fabrizio, was paid off by the Barzini family in New York and had a bomb planted in his car that planned to blow him up when he started it. But Michael wasn't the first one to get behind the wheel, and his wife Apollonia met her end. In the same period of time, his brother and his wife were taken from him, and although the bomb didn't get Michael, something inside him still died that day. This was Michael's true turning point, and irreversible damage had been done to his heart. This sudden death of two people very close to Michael puts him into a state where he's now craving vengeance, as any man would. However, he keeps it hidden and doesn't make it obvious. He's more cold-hearted than hot-headed. But again, bringing back the butterfly effect, Michael still has a choice when returning to New York. He could understand that this is what happens when you're part of the game, stay away from it and try to restore a normal life. Or he could find a way to get the vengeance for his wife and brother. And when the heart is in pain, you typically go for the more irrational option. In place of Sonny, Michael takes the place as the underboss, because his other older brother Fredo is seen as incapable, due to him being more of a party boy. But remember, this was someone who wanted nothing to do with the family business at all. But revenge has brought him in. Michael is intelligent, however. He didn't act straight out of emotion and get his revenge straight away because he wanted to ensure that his retaliation was logical. Being a leader, Michael now needs to put a moral need in place. A moral need is a moral flaw that the character must overcome to learn to act properly towards other people. Michael's moral need is that he needs to avoid becoming ruthless like other mafia bosses while still protecting his family. Being the head of a crime family has proven to turn you into someone who does everything based on what's best for business, including killing people, regardless of moral values they have personally. A year after returning, Michael re-meets Kay, his former girlfriend before all of this happened, and something interesting occurs. Despite Michael experiencing this trauma and joining the family business, Kay is unaware of all of it and still sees Michael as the old version of himself. Michael knows this and wants to keep it that way.
I mean, in 5 years, the Corleone family is going to be completely legitimate.
He lies to her, manipulates her to think otherwise, and proposes to her. He wants to be with her because she's the only one in his circle who knew him before but is yet to see what he has become. And in his mind, his ego, he wants to preserve that version of himself because he always wanted to be the golden child, and only circumstance changed that fate. He probably still loves Kay, but he marries her for internal reasons also. He wants to ease the pain from the loss of his wife and feel some love again, to still have children. Despite him talking about loving her, his voice is emotionless. He is a changed man, and Kay doesn't realize. This again leans into the idea that Michael is a sociopath, more specifically a high-functioning sociopath. They lack remorse for their actions like we've covered, but they also act in ways that show no regard for others, including lying and manipulating like Michael did with Kay, further validating the sociopath accusation. Someone who's high-functioning often comes off as charming, intelligent and warm, whilst hiding their negative behaviours. This allows Kay to fall for Michael again, marry him, and they go on to have a son and a daughter. But as life is gained over the years, life also gets lost, as Vito, Michael's father, passes away. Before he had passed away, he'd given Michael some valuable information.
Zany won't move against you first. He'll set up a meeting with someone that you absolutely trust, guaranteeing your safety. And at that meeting, you'll be assassinated. Listen, whoever comes to you with this Barzini meeting, he's a traitor. Don't forget that.
He still has vengeance at the back of his mind, and his father's advice isn't forgotten. So at his father's funeral, he identifies the family traitor as Tessio, a long-term family friend. Then, during his nephew's baptism, Michael decides to ruthlessly order the killings of Tessio, the traitor, but also the heads of the other 4 crime families. He also ends the life of Mo Green, another associate who declined business with Michael. And for a bit of sweet revenge, Michael also ends the life of his sister's husband Carlo, who was responsible for the death of Sonny. This is who Michael has become, a ruthless killer, and we need to take a step back and analyze. The choices he just made cement his place as the Godfather, the head of the Corleone family, and a ruthless mafia boss. Over the course of about a decade, Michael has become unrecognizable from what he was before. At the end of every story, even when it's in parts like The Godfather, there is a moral self-revelation for the protagonist. A moral self-revelation is when the protagonist sees themselves in a new light. They have an insight about the proper way to act towards others. In effect, they realize they've been wrong, they've hurt others, and that they must change. For Michael, there is no moral self-revelation. He's become this ruthless killer and has no care for how others feel about his choices. The moral revelation is actually given to Kay, who has seen what he has become as he slams the door in her face. Despite Michael physically rising to the top, becoming the Godfather, morally he has fallen and become the devil. This is a man who once wanted nothing to do with violence and crime, and now he's the leader of the mafia and will kill anyone who betrays him or gets in his way. I think psychologically it's safe to say he is a high-functioning sociopath, confirming the previous observation. Reason being, once joining the family again, he sees everything as a business transaction, even if it involves people's lives and emotions. Whatever contributes to maintaining the success of the family business and safety is his only moral compass, even if it involves breaking the law. His moral need was to avoid becoming ruthless like the other mafia bosses while still protecting his family, which he fails to do. We observe through the butterfly effect that there were multiple stages where he could have done things differently in order to not go down this path, but in the end it was vengeance that got the better of him. There were so many what if scenarios in the story that could have made Michael come out as a better person. What if Vito wasn't shot? What if Sonny wasn't killed? What if Fredo wasn't viewed as incompetent to run the business? What if Apollonia lived? What if him and Kay never separated? For the most part, Michael was a victim of circumstance. And that's what's so tragic about this story. Eventually, he got fully immersed in the family business and he lost his soul. As a viewer, what can we learn from Michael Corleone? Well, firstly, it's important to recognize the available decisions in situations. It's not uncommon for us to act with the first thought our emotional state desires. It's important to understand your emotions, definitely, and there will always be an emotional decision you can make, but also a logical decision. And just like the butterfly effect, you have to consider how it will affect you in the long term. This could definitely be a big decision like leaving your job or ending a relationship, but even the smaller decisions like choosing not to get angry, choosing how you talk to someone, or choosing what you eat. Every decision affects the future in one way or another. So don't be anxious over them, but give them more conscious thought. I would also say what's vital to learn is the importance of understanding your traits and putting them in the right direction. You're always going to have qualities that you possess, but you can choose to put them in a positive or negative direction. Michael has the traits necessary to lead a business and could have started a legit business away from violence, but chose a path that involves crime and violence with his family. There's always two sides to a coin. Do you think Michael is evil or just a man who loves and wants to protect his family? I've been Jay Wisdom. And until next time.